The war room of the Crithian flagship hummed with the quiet confidence of predators circling wounded prey. Warmaster Zekthar stood before the holographic display. His forearms crossed in satisfaction as he studied the primitive blue world called Earth. The data streams floating around him told a story he had seen countless times before. Another backward species, ripe for conquest. Their technology is laughable, his second-in-command hissed, pointing at the energy readings. Primitive fusion reactors, chemical propulsion systems. They barely have a presence beyond their own moon. Zekthar nodded slowly. The Crithian Dominion had been watching Earth for 37 standard cycles, ever since their long-range probes had detected the electromagnetic chatter coming from the third planet of an unremarkable yellow star. What they found was almost disappointing. The humans had stumbled into space like children learning to walk, cobbling together crude vessels and establishing a handful of mining operations in their asteroid belt. What about their military capabilities? Zekthar asked, though he already knew the answer. Minimal, came the reply. A few dozen orbital platforms with missile batteries. Technology at least 2 centuries behind our own. Their largest warship mass is barely 300,000 tons. We've seen trading guilds with better defenses. The War Master allowed himself a rare smile. Earth sat at the edge of the Orion Arm, perfectly positioned along trade routes that could shave weeks off journeys between the Dominion's core worlds and the resource-rich outer territories. More importantly, the planet itself was a prize. Liquid water covering most of its surface, a breathable atmosphere, and a biosphere teeming with genetic diversity that would be worth fortunes to the Dominion science caste. How many ships do we need? He asked. 20 would be more than sufficient, his tactical officer said. 50 would make it a massacre. Zekthar studied the hologram again. Something nagged at the back of his mind. A warrior's instinct honed over 40 years of campaigns. The humans seemed almost too vulnerable, their defenses too scattered and weak. But he pushed the feeling aside. The Dominion's intelligence network was the finest in the galaxy. If there was a threat, they would have detected it. We take 50 ships, he decided. This will be a lesson to other primitive worlds. The Dominion does not negotiate with those who have nothing to offer. 3 weeks later, the Crithian invasion fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. 50 warships, each bristling with plasma cannons and matter disruptors, arranged themselves in perfect formation. Their shields hummed with enough power to withstand orbital bombardments. Their hulls were layered with armor that had turned aside weapons fire from 100 different species. Zekthar opened a communication channel toward the inner system. Primitive humans of Earth, he broadcast, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. You have been selected for integration into the Crithian Dominion. Surrender your world immediately and your deaths will be swift. Resist and we will turn your cities to ash and your oceans to steam. You have 1 standard cycle to respond. The reply came faster than he expected. A single transmission, audio only from somewhere near the 4th planet. The voice was calm, almost disturbingly so. This is Earth Defense Coordination. Your message is acknowledged. Please proceed to Mars orbit for processing. Zekthar's translator implant worked perfectly, but the words made no sense. Processing. The humans spoke as if they were directing cargo shipments, not facing an invasion fleet that could crack their planet like an egg. Did they not understand the message? His communications officer asked, confusion clear in her voice. Perhaps their translation systems are as primitive as everything else. Zekthar muttered. It doesn't matter. Forward advance. Battle formation. We'll show them what resistance costs. The fleet moved inward, passing the gas giant the humans called Jupiter. Their sensors swept the system constantly, cataloging every ship, every station, every defensive position. Everything matched the intelligence reports perfectly. Mining vessels in the asteroid belt, moving in slow, predictable patterns. A handful of stations orbiting the inner planets. A small cluster of ships near Earth itself, probably their entire defense fleet attempting to mount a last stand. But as they passed Jupiter's orbit, one of the sensor technicians called out with alarm. Warmaster, the mining vessels are moving. Zekthar glanced at the tactical display. Of course they're moving. They're probably trying to flee. No, sir, the technician insisted, his voice rising. They're not fleeing. They're forming up, into attack formations. The War Master leaned forward, studying the display more carefully. The mining ships, dozens of them scattered throughout the asteroid belt, were indeed moving, but not away from the Crithian fleet. They were repositioning, spreading out in a pattern that looked disturbingly familiar to any military commander. It was an encirclement formation. "Those are civilian mining vessels," Zekthar said slowly. "They have no weapons. They're probably panicking." But even as he spoke, new energy readings began flooding the sensor displays. The mining ships were activating power sources, massive ones that dwarfed anything that should be possible for industrial equipment, and they were accelerating, moving with precision and speed that no mining vessel should possess. "War Master," his tactical officer said quietly, and for the first time, Zekthar heard fear in his subordinate's voice. "Those aren't mining ships." The holographic display updated, showing new data as the Krithian computers reanalyzed their targets. What they had thought were simple mining vessels were shedding their outer hulls like snakes discarding old skin. Beneath the industrial disguises were warships, massive ones bristling with weapons ports and armor plating. Dozens of them. Zekthar felt his blood run cold. How did we not detect this? But the answer was already forming in his mind. They hadn't detected it because the humans had wanted them not to detect it. Every signal Earth had broadcast, every energy reading the Krithian probes had collected over 3 decades, had been carefully crafted. The humans had known they were being watched, and they had put on a show. "Sir, sensors are detecting new contacts," another officer reported. "Behind us, multiple capital ships dropping out of FTL." The War Master turned to look at the display showing their rear positions. More human ships were appearing, emerging from faster-than-light travel, a technology the intelligence reports had sworn Earth didn't possess. These weren't disguised mining vessels. These were pure warships, and they were massive. "All ships battle stations," Zekthar ordered, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "Prepare for engagement." The communication channel crackled to life again. The same calm voice from before, but now Zekthar understood what that calmness meant. "Krithian fleet, this is Earth Defense Coordination. You have entered the Mars kill box. We strongly suggest you reconsider your current course of action. This is your only warning, Killbox." The word made Zekthar's warrior instincts scream. They had flown straight into a trap, led by their own arrogance and false intelligence. The humans hadn't been unprepared. They had been waiting. "Evasive maneuvers," he shouted. "All ships full retreat vector. Get us out of here," but it was already too late. The mining ships that weren't mining ships opened fire. The first salvo from the human dreadnoughts tore through the Krithian formation like a knife through paper. Zekthar watched in horror as 3 of his warships simply ceased to exist, their shields failing to stop whatever weapons the humans were using. The energy readings made no sense. No species in the known galaxy had weapons this powerful. "Return fire," he screamed into the communication system. "All batteries full spread." The Krithian fleet responded with decades of military precision. Plasma cannons that could melt through battle station hulls opened up. Matter disruptors that could tear apart molecular bonds fired in coordinated volleys. The weapons fire was enough to level continents, channeled toward the approaching human vessels. The human ships barely slowed down. Their shields absorbed the plasma bursts with ease, the energy dissipating across defensive screens that glowed with a strange blue light. The matter disruptors simply failed to lock on, as if the human hulls were wrapped in something that prevented the weapons from establishing the quantum connection they needed to function. "Impossible," Zekthar's tactical officer whispered. "Their technology shouldn't be this advanced." The report said. "The reports were lies," the War Master interrupted bitterly. "All of it. They wanted us to see what they wanted us to see." More human warships emerged from the asteroid belt, their true forms now revealed. These weren't the crude vessels cobbled together by a primitive species. They were sleek, deadly, designed by engineers who understood warfare at a level that made Krithian military doctrine look like children playing with toys. Railguns mounted along their hulls began firing, sending projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed toward the Krithian fleet. The kinetic weapons punched through Krithian shields as if they weren't there. One of Zekthar's cruisers took a direct hit and broke apart, its reactor core breaching and sending a wave of destruction through 2 nearby escort vessels. The battle had barely started, and he had already lost 6 ships. "Emergency FTL jump," he ordered. "All ships scatter protocol. Get out of this system by any means necessary." But when his navigation officer tried to engage the faster-than-light drive, nothing happened. The officer's face went pale as he checked his instruments. "Sir, there's some kind of field generator active." It's preventing FTL transitions. We're trapped in normal space. Zekathar felt true fear for the first time in his military career. The humans hadn't just lured them into a trap. They had sealed the trap shut. There would be no escape, no retreat to Dominion space to warn others. This was meant to be a slaughter. The orbital platforms that had seemed so primitive suddenly came alive. They weren't equipped with simple missile batteries as the intelligence reports had claimed. They were massive railgun installations, each one capable of hurling tons of metal at velocities that made them nearly impossible to dodge. The Crithian fleet was caught in a crossfire, human ships attacking from every direction, while the platforms provided supporting fire. All ships formed defensive sphere, Zekathar commanded, trying to salvage something from the disaster. Concentrate fire on the closest dreadnought. If we can break through. His words cut off as one of the human capital ships fired a weapon unlike anything he had ever seen. A beam of pure coherent energy so bright it overwhelmed the visual sensors, lanced through the center of the Crithian formation. It touched 4 ships in sequence, and each one exploded as if its reactor had been overloaded from the inside. The beam lasted only 3 seconds, but it had destroyed 4 vessels that together massed over 1 million tons. What was that? Someone screamed over the communication channel. Zekathar had no answer. The Dominion had fought wars across 24 star systems. They had encountered hundreds of different species and technologies. Nothing in their databases matched what he was seeing. The humans had leapfrogged centuries of technological development, or they had been hiding their true capabilities for longer than anyone had suspected. Another wave of human ships approached, these ones smaller and faster. They darted through the Crithian formation like predatory fish, too quick for the Dominion's targeting systems to track effectively. Each one launched missiles that seemed to think for themselves, dodging defensive fire and seeking out vulnerable points in Crithian armor. Engines were disabled. Weapon systems were destroyed with surgical precision. The humans weren't trying to annihilate the fleet. They were taking it apart piece by piece. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted 18 minutes. When it was over, 47 of Zekathar's 50 ships were either destroyed or crippled beyond repair. Only 3 vessels remained capable of basic functions, and his flagship was one of them, though barely. Life support was failing. The engines were offline. Half the crew was dead or dying. Through the static-filled communication channel, a new voice spoke. This one was different from the calm coordinator who had warned them earlier. This voice belonged to someone who had commanded battles, someone who understood war. The translator identified it as female, though Zekathar had no idea if that meant anything to humans. Crithian vessels, this is Admiral Chen of Earth Defense Command. I am offering you a choice, which is more than you were planning to offer us. Stand down completely. Allow boarding parties to secure your vessels, and your surviving crew will be treated according to the standards of civilized warfare. Resist, and we will finish what we started. Zekathar wanted to refuse. Every warrior instinct in his body screamed at him to fight to the last breath. But he looked at his tactical display, at the 3 functioning ships surrounded by dozens of human warships, and he knew the truth. They had lost before the battle even began. The moment they entered the system, their fate was sealed. We surrender, he said quietly, and felt a piece of his soul die with the words. The human boarding parties arrived within the hour. They moved through the damaged Crithian vessels with practiced efficiency, securing weapons and providing medical aid to the wounded with equal professionalism. Zekathar was brought aboard one of the human dreadnoughts, escorted by soldiers in powered armor that made them look like walking tanks. Admiral Chen met him in what appeared to be an observation deck. She was smaller than he expected, like all humans, but her eyes held the hardness of someone who had seen too much death. Behind her, through the transparent wall, Zekathar could see the debris field that had once been his proud invasion force. Why? He asked. It was all he could think to say. Why did we defend ourselves? Chen replied. Or why did we let you walk into a trap? You could have warned us away, shown your true strength. We would have reported back to the Dominion, and they would have marked your system as too dangerous to approach. The Admiral smiled, but there was no warmth in it. War Master, you're thinking too small. We didn't just want to stop you. We wanted everyone to know what happens when someone attacks Earth. You weren't the first to think we looked like easy prey, but you're the first we're sending home to tell the story. Zekathar's eyes widened. You're letting us go? Your flagship and 1 escort vessel. We're repairing your FTL drive right now. In 48 hours, you'll be capable of making the jump back to Dominion space. Your computers will contain full recordings of everything that happened here, including sensor data on our weapons and ships. The War Master struggled to understand. In his experience, victorious armies didn't send survivors home. They eliminated threats completely. Why would you give us intelligence on your capabilities? Admiral Chen turned to look out at the debris field, her expression unreadable. Because we want the galaxy to know the truth. Earth isn't weak. We never were. We just needed everyone to think we were until we were ready. Now we're ready and we're done hiding. She turned back to face him, and her next words chilled Zekthar to his core. Take a message back to your Dominion Council, War Master. Tell them that Earth is claiming its place in the galaxy. Tell them that any future aggression will be met with overwhelming force. And tell them this. You weren't the first to come looking for an easy conquest. 8 different species over the last 100 cycles have sent fleets to our system. None of them made it home. We're only letting you survive because it's time for the galaxy to understand what humanity really is. Zekthar felt his legs weaken. 8 fleets. 8 different attacks that had simply disappeared, leaving no trace, while Earth maintained its facade of primitive weakness. The humans hadn't just defeated him. They had been systematically eliminating threats for decades while pretending to be harmless. You're monsters, he whispered. No, Admiral Chen corrected. We're survivors, and we learned a long time ago that in this galaxy, appearing weak is the most dangerous thing you can do. So we made sure that anyone who thought we were easy prey would learn the truth too late to do anything about it. 2 days later, Zekthar's damaged flagship limped out of the Sol system, its holds full of recorded data and its crew haunted by what they had witnessed. Behind them, Earth's hidden fleet returned to its concealment, waiting for the next threat that would inevitably come. The Scarecrow Protocol had worked perfectly once again. The recording played on every major communication network across the Galactic Council territories. War Master Zekthar's testimony, delivered to the Crithian Dominion Council and immediately leaked to intelligence agencies throughout known space, showed the destruction of a 50-ship invasion force in less than 20 minutes. The footage was clear, undeniable, and terrifying. The initial response was disbelief. The Vaccine Collective, whose own intelligence on Earth matched the Crithian reports, declared the recordings must be fabricated. The Harathi Commonwealth suggested mass hallucination or some kind of psychological warfare. But as more agencies examined the data, as quantum signatures were verified and sensor readings confirmed, the impossible became undeniable. Earth was not what anyone thought it was. In the intelligence headquarters of the Sultaran Union, Director Eur Kesava sat in a darkened room surrounded by holographic displays. She had spent the last 3 cycles reviewing every scrap of data her agency possessed on the Sol system. What she found made her feel cold despite the warm temperature. Show me the Falxian incident again, she ordered her assistant. The hologram shifted, displaying a report from 73 cycles earlier. A Falxian raiding fleet, 16 ships, had been detected heading toward the Sol system. Their last transmission indicated they had entered the asteroid belt. After that, nothing. No debris field, no distress calls. They simply vanished as if they had never existed. Now the Gretchen Exploration Party, Kesava said. Another report, this one from 92 cycles ago. A scientific expedition of 12 vessels had requested permission to study Earth's unique biosphere. Permission was never granted by anyone, because Earth hadn't been part of the galactic community. The ships went anyway. They were never heard from again. At the time, it was assumed they had encountered some natural disaster, perhaps a solar flare or asteroid collision. The Mordesh pirates, the Kultar slavers, the Yendari prospectors. Kesva listed them one by one. Her assistant brought up each incident. Every single one followed the same pattern. Ships entered the Sol system. Ships disappeared. No wreckage was ever found. No survivors ever emerged. 12 incidents over 147 cycles, Kesava said quietly. We thought it was coincidence. Bad luck. The Sol system having some kind of natural hazard we hadn't identified. But it wasn't natural at all. Her assistant, a younger Soltaran who still believed in the fundamental order of things, shook his head. But Director, the humans couldn't have destroyed all those fleets. The technology required, the coordination, the sheer military capability, our models show it would take centuries for a species at Earth's development level to achieve that. That's exactly the point, Kesva replied. We assumed Earth was at a primitive development level because that's what we saw. But what if everything we saw was a carefully constructed lie? What if the humans have been more advanced than us this entire time and they've been pretending otherwise? The question hung in the air like a death sentence. The implications were staggering. Every assumption the Galactic Council had made about humanity was wrong. Every policy decision, every security protocol, every strategic plan that assumed Earth was backward and irrelevant needed to be reconsidered. Similar realizations were occurring across the galaxy. In the war rooms of major powers and the intelligence divisions of minor states, analysts were connecting dots that had been deliberately left unconnected. The humans had been systematically eliminating anyone who got too close, then covering their tracks so well that no one suspected foul play. It was a level of strategic deception that most species considered impossible to maintain for more than a few cycles. The humans had kept it up for over a century. On the Galactic Council station, an emergency session was called. Representatives from 237 member species gathered in the Great Chamber, a massive spherical room where delegates could address each other regardless of their environmental needs. The mood was somewhere between panic and fury. The Crithian representative spoke first, his forearms gesturing with barely contained rage. The humans have committed acts of war against multiple sovereign species. They have destroyed vessels, killed thousands, and concealed evidence of their crimes. I move that Earth be declared a hostile entity and quarantined immediately. Quarantined with what? The Vaxxan delegate shot back. If their military capability is even half of what the recordings show, we don't have the forces to enforce a quarantine. They'd destroy any blockade fleet we sent. Then we need to negotiate, suggested the Harathi representative, her three eyes blinking in sequence as she processed the situation. Open diplomatic channels. Find out what they want. Surely there's a peaceful solution. Peaceful? The Crithian delegate's voice dripped with bitterness. They've been waging a secret war against the galaxy for over a century. What part of that suggests they want peace? Director Kesava watched the debate from the Soltaran Union's observation booth. She had been invited to brief the council on her findings, but she was waiting for the right moment. The delegates needed to exhaust their initial panic before they could think clearly. As the arguments continued, she reviewed the data one more time. There was something else that bothered her, something beyond the military deception. The humans had been broadcasting their technological status to the galaxy for over 200 cycles. Radio waves, television signals, primitive internet communications. All of it had painted a picture of a species slowly, awkwardly developing spaceflight. But if the humans were advanced enough to hide entire fleets and eliminate threats with such precision, then those broadcasts had to be intentional. They weren't primitive emissions from a young civilization. They were propaganda, carefully crafted to create a specific image in the galactic consciousness. The humans had been engaged in an information warfare campaign for 2 centuries, and no one had realized it until now. The council chamber's central. AI called for order, its synthesized voice cutting through the chaos. We have a request for real-time communication from the Sol system. Source identifies as Earth Defense Command. They are requesting permission to address the council. The chamber fell silent. In all of galactic history, no species had requested to address the council without first being granted membership, or at least recognized diplomatic status. Earth had neither. The humans were simply ignoring every protocol and procedure, asserting their right to be heard through sheer audacity. This is highly irregular, the council chair said. She was a member of the ancient Archon species, one of the founders of the council itself. We do not grant audience to non-member species. With respect, honored chair, Kesava spoke up from her observation booth. I believe we should hear what they have to say. Every assumption we've made about Earth has been proven wrong. We should at least learn why they've been deceiving us before we decide how to respond. The chair considered this for a long moment. Finally, she nodded. Very well. Open the channel. But this sets no precedent. The holographic display at the center of the chamber activated, showing a human in what appeared to be a military uniform. The translation systems identified the individual as female, middle-aged by human standards, with the bearing of someone accustomed to command. The name caption read, Ambassador Sarah Chen, Earth Defense Command. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Chen began, her voice steady and clear. I am here to formally announce Earth's presence in the galactic community, and to explain why we have chosen to reveal ourselves at this time. You mean to explain why you've been destroying our ships and lying to us for over a century? The Crithian delegate interrupted. Chen's expression didn't change. Yes, that too. She gestured, and the display shifted to show a star map of the local galactic region. In the year 2151 by Earth's calendar, we launched our first faster-than-light probe. It was a crude thing, barely capable of reaching the nearest star system. What it found there changed everything. The star map zoomed in on a system about 4 light-years from Sol. The probe discovered the wreckage of a civilization. Billions dead. Their entire world had been stripped of resources and left lifeless. The destruction was so complete that we couldn't even determine what species had lived there. But we found something else in the ruins. A warning, preserved in a data cache that had survived the destruction. The display showed symbols and mathematical equations. It took us 3 years to translate it. The message was simple. Hide. There are things in the galaxy that prey on the weak, species that view primitive civilizations as resources to be harvested. If you appear defenseless, you will be destroyed. Chen paused, letting the words sink in. That discovery changed Earth's entire approach to space exploration. We realized that broadcasting our presence while we were still vulnerable was suicide, so we implemented what we called the Scarecrow Protocol. We would continue to broadcast our primitive signals, maintain the appearance of a young, weak civilization. But in secret, we would advance as fast as possible. We would build defenses, and we would eliminate any threat that came close to our home before they could report back what they found. So you admit to destroying our vessels, the Crithian delegate said. I admit to defending Earth from invasion forces, Chen corrected. Every ship we destroyed was either attempting to raid our system, enslave our population, or scout us for future conquest. We offered warnings. We gave chances to leave. Those who ignored our warnings discovered the consequences. The Vaxxan delegate spoke up, her voice thoughtful. You said you're revealing yourselves now. Why? If your strategy was working, why abandon it? Chen's expression grew grim. Because the reason we hid in the first place has returned. The civilization that destroyed our neighboring system is coming back. And this time, they're not going after one primitive world. They're coming for all of us. The holographic display changed again, showing sensor data from deep space, massive energy signatures, hundreds of them moving slowly but inexorably toward the galactic core. The readings indicated ships, or perhaps something even larger, with power outputs that dwarfed anything the Council species possessed. We've been monitoring them for 20 cycles, Chen continued. They call themselves the Devourers, at least that's our translation. They move through space, consuming everything in their path. They're still years away, but they're coming. And when they arrive, the galaxy will need every advantage it can get. She looked directly at the council chair. Earth didn't hide because we wanted to. We hid because we had to. We've spent 2 centuries preparing for this threat, building weapons and strategies to fight something that treats entire civilizations as prey. Now we're offering to share everything we've learned, but only if the galaxy is willing to work with us instead of against us. The council chamber erupted into chaos again, but this time it was different. The anger was still there, but now it was mixed with fear. If the humans were telling the truth, and there was something out there dangerous enough to scare a species that had just destroyed a Crithian invasion fleet in minutes, then the galaxy had much bigger problems than Earth's deception. Director Keseva pulled up the deep space sensor data Chen had transmitted. Her analysis systems began processing it, and within moments she had preliminary confirmation. The energy signatures were real. Something massive was indeed heading toward the galaxy. The humans hadn't been paranoid after all. They had been preparing for war. 3 months after Ambassador Chen's revelation, the Galactic Council remained deeply divided. Some species wanted to embrace Earth's offer of alliance. Others still viewed humanity as a threat that needed to be contained. But while politicians argued, military commanders and intelligence directors were having very different conversations. Director Kesva found herself in a classified briefing room deep within Council Station, surrounded by defense chiefs from 20 major civilizations. At the head of the table sat Admiral Chen, who had transitioned from Earth's ambassador to the de facto military coordinator for what was being called the Terran Defense Initiative. The name was deliberately chosen. Humans had insisted on it. The message was clear. Earth would lead, or there would be no alliance. "Let me be clear about something," Chen began, her voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "We're not asking for your permission. We're offering you a chance to survive. The Devourers will be here in approximately 4 cycles. With or without your cooperation, Earth will fight them. The question is whether you'll fight beside us or face them alone after we're gone." The Krithian military commander, a different individual than the unfortunate Zekthar, bristled at the tone. "You speak as if you alone can stand against this threat. Your ships are advanced, but you're one system, one species. The Council represents hundreds of civilizations." Chen activated the holographic display. "Let me show you what one species can do when survival is the only option." The display lit up with tactical data, ship specifications, and deployment maps. But what made the assembled commanders lean forward in their seats was the scale. Earth had revealed some of its capabilities during the Krithian incident. But this was something else entirely. This was the full picture. "The ships that destroyed the Krithian fleet were our border patrol," Chen explained calmly. "Outdated designs, scheduled for decommission within the next 10 cycles. They used technology we developed 40 years ago." She pulled up schematics of massive vessels that made the border patrol ships look like shuttlecraft. "These are our current generation dreadnoughts. We have 147 of them positioned throughout the Sol system and in hidden facilities, within 20 light-years of Earth. Each one carries enough firepower to reduce a planet's surface to molten slag within hours." The display shifted again, showing what looked like small moons but were actually mobile battle stations. "These are our fortress platforms, self-sufficient installations that can operate independently for up to 50 cycles. We have 23 scattered throughout what we call the Sol Defense Sphere, a region extending out to 100 light-years from Earth." Kesava did rapid calculations in her head. The numbers were staggering. The Soltaran Union, one of the most powerful military forces in the Council, had approximately 200 capital ships spread across 30 systems. Earth, a single system that no one had taken seriously until recently, had nearly as many in just their current generation fleet. And if the border patrol ships were considered outdated, what else were the humans hiding? "How?" the Vaxxan commander asked. "How did you build all this without anyone noticing? The resources alone would require strip mining your entire system." "We didn't mine our system," Chen replied. "We mined everything within 100 light-years. While the galaxy was watching us struggle with primitive rockets around Earth, we were establishing hidden facilities in deep space, asteroid mines, automated factories, refineries built into rogue planets. We've been engaged in industrial expansion on a scale that most species can't imagine, because you've never had to." She pulled up more data, and this information made several commanders physically recoil. It was intelligence data, complete breakdowns of fleet compositions, military doctrines, political structures, and economic systems for every major civilization in the Council. The level of detail was impossible. It would take hundreds of operatives decades to gather this kind of information. "How long have you been spying on us?" Kesava asked quietly. "Since the beginning," Chen admitted without hesitation. "We learned early that information was just as important as weapons. When you thought we were sending out primitive space probes, we were actually deploying intelligence-gathering platforms. When you detected what you assumed were civilian research stations, half of them were actually signals intercept facilities. We've been listening to your communications, tracking your ship movements, and analyzing your military capabilities for 200 cycles." The Harathi commander stood abruptly, her 3 eyes wide with outrage. "This is unacceptable. You've violated every principle of sovereign privacy. You've committed espionage against hundreds of species." "Yes," Chen agreed simply. "We committed espionage. We violated your privacy. We did everything necessary to ensure our survival. And if you're honest with yourselves, you'll admit you would have done the same thing in our position." The room fell silent. Several commanders looked uncomfortable, but none argued. The truth was undeniable. If any of their species had discovered the threat of the Devourers while still weak and vulnerable, they would have taken similar precautions. The humans had simply been more thorough about it. Chen continued, her tone softening slightly. I'm not trying to justify everything we've done. I'm trying to make you understand why we did it. Earth learned a hard lesson from the ruins of our neighboring system. In this galaxy, weakness is fatal. Appearing weak is even worse because it invites predators, so we became something else. We became the thing that predators fear. She pulled up a new display, this one showing battle simulations. This is what happens if the Devourers reach Council space, and you face them with current military doctrines and technology. Total defeat within 2 cycles, 97% casualties across all species. The few survivors would be scattered refugees fleeing into deep space. The simulation was brutal in its efficiency. The Devourer forces, represented by red markers, swept through system after system. Council fleets engaged and were destroyed. Planets were consumed. Civilizations that had existed for thousands of cycles were erased in moments. Now watch what happens with human tactical integration, Chen said. The simulation reset. This time human forces were shown as blue markers, positioned in strategic locations throughout Council space. When the Devourers attacked, the response was different. Council forces didn't engage directly. Instead, they drew the enemy into kill boxes, areas where human weapon systems could achieve maximum effectiveness. The battle was still costly, but the outcome changed. The Devourers were stopped. Human tactical doctrine is based on a simple principle, Chen explained. Never fight fair. Never engage an enemy on their terms. Use deception, misdirection, and overwhelming force applied at critical moments. We've been refining these strategies for 2 centuries, and we're offering to share them. The Crithian commander studied the simulation carefully. Despite his species' recent humiliation at human hands, he was professional enough to recognize effective strategy. You're proposing integrated command. Human officers giving orders to Council forces. Not exactly, Chen corrected. We're proposing a unified command structure with human strategic oversight. Your ships, your crews, your officers. But our battle plans, our logistics coordination, our intelligence network, we provide the framework, you provide the strength. And if we refuse? Kesava asked. Chen's expression became hard. Then Earth seals itself off from the rest of the galaxy. We have enough resources, enough firepower, and enough strategic depth to weather the Devourer assault on our own. We'll take heavy casualties, but we'll survive. The same can't be said for the Council. It was a calculated gamble, and everyone in the room knew it. The humans were betting that fear of the Devourers would overcome pride and suspicion. They were offering survival at the cost of accepting human leadership. For civilizations that had existed for millennia, that viewed themselves as the advanced, sophisticated powers of the galaxy, it was a bitter pill to swallow. But as the simulation played again, showing the stark difference between defeat and survival, the choice became clearer. Pride was expensive. Survival was priceless. Over the next 3 weeks, agreements were hammered out. The Terran Defense Initiative was officially established with support from 47 Council species. Others remained neutral, refusing to commit but not actively opposing. A handful, mostly those who had lost ships to Earth's secret defenses over the years, remained hostile. The humans didn't seem bothered by the partial support. We expected this, Chen told Kesva during one of their private meetings. Full galactic unity is a fantasy. We'll work with those willing to fight, and hope the others see reason before it's too late. Kesava had been appointed as the Council's liaison to Human Military Command, a position that gave her unprecedented access to Earth's operations. What she saw in those first weeks both impressed and terrified her. The humans moved with a purpose that bordered on obsession. Resources were allocated with ruthless efficiency. Military drills ran constantly. Intelligence reports were analyzed and acted upon within hours. But what struck her most was the human attitude toward the coming conflict. They weren't afraid. They were excited. 2 centuries of preparation were finally going to be put to the test. For a species that had defined itself by readiness for the worst possible scenario, the arrival of the Devourers was almost a validation. You actually want this fight, Kesava said to Chen one day, unable to keep the disbelief from her voice. The Admiral considered the question carefully before answering. Want is the wrong word. We're ready for it. There's a difference. Humans learned a long time ago that hoping for peace while preparing for war is the only rational strategy. We hoped we were wrong about the Devourers. We hoped the galaxy would be a safe place where cooperation and diplomacy solved every problem. But we prepared for the alternative. She pulled up a display showing Earth's military production facilities, now working at maximum capacity. Every human alive today grew up knowing about the Devourers. Every ship we built, every weapon we designed, every strategy we developed was with this moment in mind. We've spent 200 cycles getting ready. Now we find out if we were ready enough. As Kesava watched the massive war machine humanity had built grinding into full operation, she realized something profound. The galaxy had worried about Earth being a threat. They had feared human deception and military power, but they had missed the real story. Humanity wasn't interested in conquering the galaxy. They were interested in saving it, whether the galaxy wanted to be saved or not. The Devourers were coming, and they were about to discover what happened when they threatened a species that had spent 2 centuries preparing for exactly this moment. The Devourer fleet arrived at the edge of the galaxy exactly when human calculations predicted they would. Director Kesava stood in the command center of the TDFS Unity, the flagship of the combined Terran Defense Initiative fleet, and watched as sensors detected the first energy signatures. She had spent the last 4 cycles working alongside humans, learning their tactical doctrines and strategic thinking. Nothing in that time had prepared her for the scale of what was approaching. Sensor contact confirmed, the human tactical officer reported. Multiple massive energy signatures detected at bearing 347 Mark 6. Distance approximately 2 light-years in closing. Initial count suggests over 300 capital-class vessels. 300. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. The combined TDI fleet numbered just under 800 ships from 47 different species. On paper, they had numerical superiority, but the sensor readings showed that each Devourer vessel massed 3 to 4 times what Council ships did. They weren't just outnumbered. They were outmassed by a significant margin. Admiral Chen stood at the center of the command deck, her expression calm as she studied the tactical displays. Around her, officers from a dozen different species worked at their stations, the result of 4 cycles of intensive training and integration. The command structure had been controversial, placing a human admiral in charge of forces from civilizations that considered themselves more advanced. But watching Chen work, Kesava understood why it was necessary. The human didn't just see tactics. She saw the entire strategic picture in a way that others struggled to comprehend. Update from the outer sensor grid, another officer reported. This one was Vaxen, her translator unit converting her species' musical language into standard galactic speech. The Devourers are not attempting stealth. They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies. The translation systems are still processing, but it appears to be some kind of demand for surrender. Ignore it, Chen ordered. They're testing our response time and communication protocols. Helm, signal all fleet elements. Move to deployment positions as planned. Science stations, I want continuous analysis of their power signatures. Look for any weaknesses, any patterns we can exploit. The Unity's massive engines powered up and the flagship began moving toward its designated position. Around it, the rest of the TDI fleet was doing the same, arranging themselves into a formation that looked nothing like traditional Council battle doctrine. Ships were spread out over a huge volume of space, positioned at seemingly random intervals. To anyone unfamiliar with human tactics, it looked disorganized, almost chaotic, but Kesava had learned what those positions meant. Every ship was positioned to create overlapping fields of fire. Every formation was designed to allow rapid repositioning. The apparent chaos was actually a carefully constructed web that would make it nearly impossible for the Devourers to concentrate their forces effectively. War Master Zekthar stood at one of the auxiliary command stations, his forearms working the controls with practiced efficiency. He had volunteered to serve in the TDI despite his species' initial objections. The Krithian warrior who had led the failed invasion of Earth was now taking orders from the same humans who had destroyed his fleet. When asked why he had made this choice, his answer had been simple. Pride is meaningless if you're dead. Admiral, we're receiving a communication request, the communications officer reported. It's from the Devourer fleet. They're demanding to speak with whoever commands this defensive force. Chen smiled slightly. Put them through. Let's see what they have to say. The main display shifted, showing a being unlike anything Kesava had encountered. It was massive, easily 3 times the size of a human, with a body that seemed to be made of both organic matter and mechanical components. Multiple limbs extended from its torso, each one ending in different tools or weapons. Its face, if it could be called that, had no features Kesava could recognize as eyes or a mouth. But it spoke, its voice a grinding metallic sound that the translation system struggled to interpret. "Primitive species of this galaxy," the Devourer leader said. "We are the collective. We have consumed 1,000 civilizations across the void between galaxies. Your resistance is meaningless. Your technology is inferior. Surrender now, and your integration into the collective will be swift. Resist and your suffering will be prolonged." Admiral Chen stepped forward, her posture relaxed and confident. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen, commanding officer of the Terran Defense Initiative Fleet. I have a counteroffer. Turn your fleet around, leave this galaxy, and never return. Do this, and you get to survive. Refuse, and we'll show you what happens when you threaten humanity's home." The Devourer leader made a sound that might have been laughter. "You are one species among many. Your confidence is unfounded. We have observed your communications. We know the divisions among your so-called alliance. We know the Council species distrust you. Your unity is fragile. Your forces uncoordinated. You will fall like all the others." "You've been watching our public communications," Chen agreed. "That's exactly what we wanted you to watch. While you were observing our apparent discord, you missed what actually matters. Would you like to know what humanity has been doing for the last 200 cycles?" She didn't wait for an answer. "We've been preparing for you. Every ship we built, every weapon we designed, every tactical doctrine we developed was specifically created to fight an enemy like you. You think you're facing a fragmented alliance? You're wrong. You're facing a trap that's been over 2 centuries in the making." Chen gestured and the tactical display updated. New markers appeared throughout the region, showing human forces that hadn't been visible before. Stealth ships, hidden weapon platforms, entire fleets that had been lurking in the void, waiting for this exact moment. "See, the thing about humans," Chen continued, her voice taking on an edge, "is that we're really good at one thing, killing things that threaten us. We've been doing it to each other for our entire history, wars that lasted decades, weapons that could destroy our entire planet. We nearly wiped ourselves out 6 times before we even left our solar system. And every time we learned, we adapted, we got better at it." The Devourer leader seemed to process this information. When it spoke again, its voice carried a hint of uncertainty. "You claim to have prepared for us, yet your technology was reported as primitive. Your species was dismissed as inconsequential." "Exactly," Chen said, and now she was smiling fully. "We wanted everyone to dismiss us. The Council species, the raiders and slavers who came looking for easy prey, and you. We've been the galaxy's scarecrow for 2 centuries, looking weak and defenseless while we sharpened our teeth. Everyone who thought we were easy learned the truth too late. You're about to learn the same lesson." She turned to her tactical officer. "Signal all fleet elements. Execute Operation Revelation. Show them what we really are." Throughout the region of space where the TDI fleet was positioned, things began to activate. Ships that had appeared to be simple civilian vessels dropped their camouflage, revealing military-grade hulls bristling with weapons. Asteroids that the Devourers had flown past turned out to be hollow, filled with missile batteries and railgun emplacements. Even the empty space itself became dangerous as minefields activated, spread across millions of cubic kilometers. But the real surprise was what came next. Behind the Devourer fleet, exactly where their retreat path should have been, space itself seemed to tear open. Massive human dreadnoughts, each one larger than anything the Council had ever seen, emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. They had been waiting in a nearby system, positioned there months ago based on human predictions of exactly where and when the Devourers would arrive. The trap was complete. The Devourers were surrounded, caught between the main TDI fleet ahead of them and the human capital ships behind them. The carefully maintained image of a fragmented, unprepared defense had evaporated in seconds, replaced by the reality of a coordinated military operation that had been planned down to the smallest detail. "All ships weapons free," Chen ordered calmly. "Target their capital vessels first. Destroy their command structure, then work through their fleet systematically. Remember your training. Don't let them concentrate their forces. Keep them divided, keep them confused, and keep them dying. The battle that followed would be analyzed by military historians for generations. The Devourers fought with the ferocity of a species that had conquered countless civilizations. Their weapons were powerful, their tactics refined through thousands of campaigns. But they had never faced an enemy like humanity. Human ships didn't engage in traditional ship-to-ship combat. They used deception, appearing in one location and attacking from another. They employed weapons that the Devourers hadn't anticipated. Railguns that fired projectiles at relativistic speeds, missiles that could think and adapt their attack patterns, energy weapons that bypassed traditional shielding. Every advantage the Devourers expected to have was countered by some human innovation. The Council species ships integrated into the human tactical network provided crucial support. They weren't as advanced as human vessels, but they didn't need to be. Under human coordination, they became part of a larger strategy. They drew Devourer fire, created openings for human ships to exploit, provided sensor coverage that allowed the entire fleet to operate as a single organism. Kesava watched from her station as the battle unfolded. She saw Devourer capital ships, massive vessels that should have been nearly indestructible, torn apart by concentrated fire. She saw human frigates, tiny compared to their enemies, darting through the Devourer formation like predatory fish, targeting engines and weapon systems with surgical precision. She saw the tactics she had studied for 4 cycles being executed perfectly, every ship knowing its role, every officer trusting the human strategic command. War Master Zekthar operated his station with grim satisfaction, coordinating Krithian forces alongside ships from species his people had considered enemies just cycles ago. The irony wasn't lost on him. It had taken humanity to teach the galaxy how to work together. The battle lasted 14 hours. When it ended, 300 Devourer ships had been reduced to 67, and those survivors were fleeing back into deep space, their retreat covered by desperate sacrifice from their rear guard. The TDI fleet had taken casualties, 93 ships destroyed and 200 more damaged to various degrees. But they had won. The Devourers, the threat that had driven humanity's 2-century preparation, had been defeated. In the aftermath, as rescue operations began and damage reports came in, Admiral Chen sat in her command chair and allowed herself a moment of exhaustion. Kesva approached her, uncertain what to say. "We were never really the target, were we?" Kesava asked quietly. The Scarecrow Protocol, the deception, letting everyone think we were primitive. It wasn't about hiding from the Council species. Chen shook her head. The Council species were a secondary concern. We eliminated the ones that attacked us and we monitored the ones that didn't. But no, our real focus was always on them. She gestured toward the display showing the retreating Devourer ships. We knew they were coming. We knew what they could do. Everything we did was preparation for this fight. But you let the galaxy think you were weak. You let species like the Krithians attack you. You let others see you as primitive. Why not reveal your strength earlier and unite the galaxy against the real threat? Because fear is a better motivator than truth, Chen replied. If we had revealed ourselves decades ago and told the Council about the Devourers, what would have happened? Half the species would have denied the threat existed. A quarter would have tried to make peace with the Devourers. Another quarter would have tried to use the crisis to gain political advantage. We would have wasted decades arguing instead of preparing. She pulled up a display showing the TDI fleet composition. Instead, we stayed hidden. We let the galaxy continue its politics and rivalries while we built the weapons needed to win. We let species attack us so we could test our defenses and refine our tactics. We gathered intelligence on everyone so we'd know exactly what forces we could count on when the time came. And when the Devourers finally arrived, we had everything ready. Kesva looked at the casualty reports, at the thousands of lives lost in the battle. And the cost? The species who didn't join the TDI, the trust you destroyed by deceiving everyone, was worth it, Chen said firmly. Trust can be rebuilt, political relationships can be repaired, but you can't bring back extinct civilizations. We saved the galaxy today, Director. The fact that the galaxy didn't know it needed saving until the last moment doesn't change that reality. Over the following months, as the galaxy processed what had happened, the truth about humanity's long deception became clear. The ruins that had warned Earth about predatory species weren't just a random discovery. Human deep space probes had found dozens of dead civilizations, all destroyed by either the Devourers or other threats. Earth's entire strategy had been born from the understanding that the galaxy was a dangerous place, and appearing weak was fatal. The Scarecrow Protocol was revealed in full, every fake technology reading, every staged incident, every carefully crafted piece of intelligence that had fooled the galaxy for 2 centuries. The humans had been engaged in the longest, most comprehensive deception in galactic history, and it had worked. The political aftermath was complicated. Some species praised humanity's foresight and strategic brilliance. Others condemned the deception and demanded accountability for the ships Earth had destroyed over the years. But everyone agreed on one thing: humanity had saved them from a threat they hadn't seen coming. In the command center of the Unity, Admiral Chen stood with Zekthar and Kesava, looking out at the fleet as it began the long journey back to Council space. The Crithian warrior spoke first. "My people will want to know if this changes anything. If Earth will continue to hide its capabilities, or if you'll finally join the galactic community openly." Chen considered the question. "We're done hiding. The Devourers are defeated, at least for now, but there will be other threats. There always are. Earth will take its place in the galaxy, but on our terms. We'll share our technology, our tactics, our intelligence network, but we'll never again pretend to be something we're not." "And if someone objects?" Kesava asked. "If species view human openness as a threat?" The Admiral smiled slightly. "Then they'll learn the same lesson the Devourers did. Humanity survived 2 centuries of hiding because we had to. Now we don't have to anymore. And a humanity that doesn't need to hide is something the galaxy has never seen before." She turned to look at her officers, at the representatives from dozens of species who had fought under human command and emerged victorious. The galaxy thought Earth was easy. They thought we were primitive, weak, and insignificant. They were wrong about all of it. And now they know the truth. We were never easy. We were never weak. We were just waiting for the right moment to show everyone what humanity really is. Outside the viewports, the TDI fleet moved through space in perfect formation, a symbol of what the galaxy could achieve when it worked together, and at its heart, surrounded by ships from 100 different worlds, flew the vessels of Earth. No longer hiding, no longer pretending, just ready for whatever came next. The Scarecrow Protocol was over. The real story of humanity in the galaxy was just beginning.